Hello, and welcome to the Move Nourish podcast. I am your host, Alyssa, and today we're going to be talking about why your self care plan is not working. But first, I'm going to make a case of why you need a plan, which is usually most people's first problem. Then we will talk in detail about the elements that are usually lacking in a self care plan, especially a plan to address chronic health issues that you have made yourself, and how you can fix that. So, first off, if you are trying to feel better, be able to capacitate more, and show up for your family, your loved ones, your community, your activism, the world, the larger project of collective liberation, you need a plan. Not least of which because the overarching sort of narratives of the world that we live in actively discourage the type of self-care that goes down to the root. We are encouraged to engage in self-care insofar as it involves buying things and buying services and spending a bunch of money on things that are shame-based, right? That are things that are marketed to us, especially to women, that are going to fix us or make us pretty or make people love us, right? That can be part of self-care, but that's not gonna get to the root cause of why you're not sleeping, or why you're not sleeping well, or why you can't stick to an exercise routine, or why your stress is off the charts every day, or why you are so tired that you can't make it through your workday without a bunch of caffeine, right? A true self-care plan will address and a health plan will address those things at the root, and implementing it with consistency and your ability to implement that with consistency will expand your capacity and your window of tolerance for the world and lifing over time. So even if your plan, right, because my neurospicy, my neurodivergent folks, right, even if your brain doesn't like plans or has a complicated relationship to plans, there needs to be some kind of structure, right? Like a plan is required because there are multiple elements that we need to plug in with here, and it just gets too unruly if you don't have some sort of structure around that, right? Like we're talking about simultaneously addressing food habits, stress management habits, sleep, your movement routine, your lifestyle. How do you drink? Make sure you drink enough water. If you don't have some sort of structure, now it can be an organic feeling structure, it can be a gentle structure, it can be a structure that works for you, which we'll talk about in a minute. But some type of structure is required if you're going to try and address the lack of self care in your life and the way that you show up for yourself at the root. Which leads me to a little story, a personal story. Not only do have I since learned this and seen this on a professional level with dozens and dozens of clients over my years of clinical practice, but that all started, as it often does for sensitives and healing minded people, with my own personal journey. So back in 2012, I was sickly and anemic and stressed out and anxious and depressed and tired all the time. And the journey that took me from there to where I am now, which is the healthiest I've ever been, the most resourced I've ever been, with the healthiest relationships that I've ever had in my life of all different kinds. It took a lot of trial and error, a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted money, and a lot of frustration and stopping and starting and not knowing if what I was doing was working because I was doing it by myself. And while I am grateful to that chapter for leading me to where I am now, I also became very inspired that not everybody, and very passionate about the fact that I don't think everybody should have to do that. So that's why I do what I do. That is why I created the one-to-one sessions that I lead with client. And the wisdom that I took from those years, one of them is that truly healing from chronic burnout and fatigue and the slew of issues that can develop alongside that, right? Like digestion problems, crappy sleep patterns, acne, anxiety, depression, on and on. It requires a badass plan. It requires a plan that meets certain benchmarks and qualifications. So let's dive into what those are and why they're often missing, and why they can be really hard to hit all of these essential points if you're trying to do it on your own. The first one is that a plan in order to be considered what I would consider a badass plan, or what I call in the one-to-one sessions, the protocol or a badass protocol, is that one size fits all templates, of which there are 9 million on the internet now, right? Meal plans, workout plans, 30-day whatevers. There's a new one every year, right? Every New Year's we get some new challenge. Those one size fits all plans are not enough when it comes to healing from like multifactorial entrenched health patterns or entrenched patterns of failing to engage in true self-care. What I have found both in myself and with clients over the years is that your plan, first and foremost, has to be customized to your specific, not only just your specific symptom profile. I think that's obvious. But it also has to be tailored to your specific life circumstances and your level of commitment and what your routines look like and what your schedule is. Do you have kids? Do you have animals? Are you caring for someone? How much time do you have to cook? Do you like to cook? If it's not individualized to you and your circumstances, it's not going to work, or it's not going to work as well. It's going to be harder for you to implement. It's going to require more effort than one that is aligned with your specific circumstances. And you're not going to be able to keep up with it as well as something that is custom built for you. The second thing that and I mentioned this a moment ago, the second thing that a protocol or a health plan can and should be in order to really work is comprehensive. Like I was saying, there's a million different meal plans and different workout plans and different challenges and 30-day whatevers. Like, the issue sometimes with those is that they only address part of the issue, and that you'll get benefit from them. Like, I'm not saying that you won't. But if you really want to see a lot of progress and see transformation in the way that your life routines work and your energy levels and your sleep and your ability to show up in your relationships, right? You need a plan that holistically addresses all of the major foundations that we know create good health habits, right? You need something that addresses food habits and meal prep, stress management strategies, whether that's herbs or supplements, combination thereof, right? Breathwork, exercise, whatever. Your sleep habits and your particular sleep problems. Are you having trouble falling asleep? Are you having trouble staying asleep? Why are you having trouble staying asleep? You also need to address quote unquote exercise, or what I prefer to talk about in the language of movement, right? What is your time availability for that? Well, how close are you to a gym? What are there specific ways that work in your life? Do you work from home, and can you incorporate more movement into your workday in some way? And which leads right into lifestyle stuff. So what I have found and what I know at this point is that addressing all of that synergistically has a cumulative effect that is like more than the sum of its parts. So in order for a plan to really be a plan that's going to work for you, it has to be comprehensive, and it has to plug in at multiple key points in a way that's strategic. The third thing that I see missing from plans, health plans or self-care plans that people make for themselves or that I see out in the world, is that they're not scalable. Something I frequently say here at Cunning Woman is start small, but start somewhere. I learned that working in outdoor education and organic farming with Jones Valley Teaching Farm years ago. That was something that we said that was one of our values: start small, but start somewhere. You need to make enough of an adjustment or a change in order for it to have an impact. But a plan that is truly effective and is really going to work and is going to work for you should include some sort of flexibility and some troubleshooting capacity to break the big stuff down into manageable chunks so that you implement it, and that keeps you consistent, that builds your momentum, that builds your self-confidence and your felt sense of your own competency, and then you build from there. So when I build a plan for someone in clinic, right, we have a conversation when I present it to them of, this is the goal, and then this is where we're going, and then this is how we scaffold that in order to get you there. So to give you an example, an easy example, right? If I know that based on someone's weight, age, activity level, circumstances, that they need to be drinking an ounce of water per pound of body weight a day, right? Which is a good general rule. So let's just say that, 160 ounces of water a day. That's a little bit over a gallon. I don't start them there. I don't say, tomorrow I want you to try and drink a gallon of water, right? No, I say, how much water are you currently drinking daily on average? Literally, wherever that is, it's fine. This has to come from a place of non-judgment. But literally, wherever it is, it's fine. But let's start there. And then we workshop what feels manageable, but still challenging in terms of how quickly and by how much we increase that in order to get to our goal. And then we'll just literally work backwards from that. We'll say at the end of the next 6 weeks, we want to be at a gallon of water a day. How quickly does it feel manageable while still being challenging? By how many ounces can we increase that each week of your daily intake in order to get there? So sometimes that means increasing by just 1 8-ounce glass each week. If you have a water bottle that you love, which is something I recommend for this particular task, if you have a water bottle that you love and it's 32 ounces, sidebar, as an American living abroad, the thing that I get teased about the most is our penchant or like ridiculous, when I now can see their point of is like ridiculously large water bottles. And my counterpoint is I don't understand how all these Europeans aren't dehydrated. They drink no water and they drink so much coffee. So I'm not saying I've landed in either camp. But anyway, if you have a favorite water bottle and it's 32 ounces, right? Can you increase it by 1 water bottle a day? Let's say you're drinking 2 of them a day. Can you drink 3 of them a day by 2 weeks from now? Right? That's an example of what I mean by scalable. And that needs to be built into your health plan. And that requires knowledge of and experience with how to scaffold those things, how to scale them, and again, how to troubleshoot that and implement that into your routine in a way that feels like it's going to stretch you slightly outside of your comfort zone while still meeting you where you are. The fourth thing that a health plan or a self-care plan needs to be is sustainable. Here is the juicy one. If the plan is too complicated, or it doesn't fit into your life, or it's not those other 3 things that we have talked about already, individualized, comprehensive, and scalable. If it's not any of those things, or if it's too complicated, you won't keep up with it. You just and that's not your fault. That's just like a square peg round hole. A sustainable plan needs to be able to, again, be scaled up or down until it sticks. So it needs to be scalable. If it's too complicated or you don't understand it, and if you don't understand the why between each piece, that's one of the things that I think I see make people's plans or plans that folks get from other practitioners not be sustainable is the why behind why I'm asking you to do something that's going to require an effort isn't there. But if for any reason it doesn't feel sustainable, i.e. it is pushing too far on the outside of the comfort zone without the meeting you where you are piece, you're not going to stick with it. The last thing that a healthcare plan should be, in some form or another, is measurable. This doesn't have to be rigid. And I think, in fact, sometimes in our very quantitative, numbers driven world, sometimes things are too rigid or these measurement metrics are too rigid, right? What I absolutely do not mean by this is a number on a scale. So let's just be really clear about that. But there's still an important consideration for how will you know if your plan has been successful? What will that look like? What will that feel like? And you should be asking yourself these questions at the outset and circling back to them regularly. So, for example, one of the mechanisms by which I was taught to do this in my clinical training, which is numbers-based, but it's still, you can do it in a way that still feels gentle and human, is when a client comes to me, when they're putting in their chief concerns, their primary concerns, the reasons that they're coming to me, the things that they want to really dig into and heal from, such as autoimmunity, thyroid. I work with a lot of hypothyroidism. I work with a lot of crappy periods, so PCOS, endometriosis, PMDD, cysts, fibroids, things like that. I work with a lot of digestive issues, constipation, heartburn. I work with a lot of poor sleep. I'm starting to work more and more with folks undergoing the menopause transition. One of the things that they do is when they're listing their primary concerns, they will give me a number on a scale of 1 to 10 of how severely that is affecting them. How severe are those symptoms? How severely is it impacting their life? And they'll give that a number when they're filling in their form. And we file that away. And then at the 6-week mark, I will ask them to re-rate those concerns without necessarily showing them or reminding them of what they rated them before so that you get a more authentic sense. And it can be really inspirational and inspiring and motivating when I say, hey, just to let you know, when we're talking about your low energy levels, you rated that at a 7 or 8 out of 10 when we first started working together. And now 8 weeks in, 12 weeks in, you're at like a 4. Like that's your self-reported rating. And to my medical folks, I know that there are limitations to self-reported ratings. That's a different conversation. But I also think that like people's embodied experiences of their own health issues that in the body that they live in every day are sometimes undervalued and oftentimes undervalued in the medical system in which we exist. And so it can be very empowering to say, oh, not only do I generally feel like that's getting better, but I also 12 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, I said this was ruining my life and I gave it an 8 or a 9 out of 10. And now not only do I generally feel that, but like I was asked in a blind like way of in order to rate it again. And it's quantitatively ruining my life a lot less or like not ruining my life at all anymore. So ask yourself, how will you know if this plan has been successful? What are the immediate success results that you would like to achieve within 3 to 6 months of implementing this plan? And what will that look and feel like? Like I was saying before at the beginning of our episode, I have found that I struggled personally years ago, and folks that I see in clinics struggle to design a plan that meets all of these qualifications on their own. It took me years of both my entire background as a practitioner, as an educator, right? Like as a coach, none of that 8, 10 years of training and experience is what allows me to even identify that these are the elements of a plan that is going to work for someone. Um, and it can be really hard to do that and almost impossible to do that in a way that actually hits all these points by yourself. And you're going to waste time. You're going to waste money. You're going to do a lot more guess and test. You're going to do a lot more trial and error than if you seek out some help with that. So I don't want you to waste time and money on like supplements that don't work. So supplements are a good example here because in the US, the supplement industry is like wildly not regulated. So companies can put kind of anything they want in supplements and then tell you it's going to do anything they want to tell you it's going to do. And the fact checking on that is limited. So one of the things that I offer at Cutting Woman is a supplement audit where I literally just look at your supplements and look at your goals and see where your supplement list, your current supplement list, either there's things that are actively working against your goals. There are things that are just wasting your money and are just a pain in the butt to keep up with and aren't contributing in a meaningful way towards your goals. And then also what's missing from your supplement list based on the goals that you have brought to the table. So that's a big one for folks. And that's a big waste of money for folks and a source of frustration for folks. I took this. The same goes for herbal formulas, I find sometimes too. I took this, but I didn't know how much to take. I didn't know whether this was a good one. I don't know how to assess whether this is a good supplement or a bad supplement, whether it's going to work, right? And let me tell you, it being expensive is not a good indicator. Like the most expensive supplement is not the one that's going to work the best, right? Like when you get into things like proprietary formulas and they won't even tell you what's in it. So there are supplements that work, and they are mostly, honestly, the ones that are less is more. They're nutrients, right? They are single herbs that are extracted and processed in a certain way. They are liquid extracts that have been professionally formulated in a certain way at a certain point of the plant's growth, and you're taking a certain amount of them at a certain time for a certain amount of time, right? That information, there's a lot of it out there, right? Dr. Google, thank you very much. But no, thank you, because that's just, and now you get into like ChatGPT, like that's just not going to be as effective as a knowledgeable eye on that. So you can waste a lot of money. You can waste a lot of your motivation and your enthusiasm on those things if you're trying to design that yourself. You can make a similar case about exercise, right? I'm a strength and conditioning coach with a functional movement background and a background in MMA. And you can do a lot of things that are going to tire you out that aren't going to give you the gains that you want. It's very well established in the research that muscle soreness is not a good and reliable indicator of the quality of the workout that you're doing and whether you're going to get the gains that you think you're going to get. That's like a whole world in and of itself. And similarly, shame-based and punishment-based attitudes and narratives around exercise routines and exercise plans are, first of all, I find them ideologically abhorrent, and de-shaming is part of the collective project and it's part of what we do here at Cunning Woman. But they also doesn't work as well. And it's also not necessary for most people to be having this like perfect regimented workout plan. Again, it needs to be flexible. It needs to be individualized to you, and a templated program or a 30-day ab, whatever that you download from the internet, you're probably going to see some benefits if you can convince yourself to do it consistently, which is partially dependent on if you can understand why you're being asked to do the things that you're being asked to do in the amounts and frequencies that you're asked to do them. But what most people need when it comes to movement, again, is something that is more individualized, more comprehensive, scalable, sustainable, and in some way organically or more quantitatively measurable. So, in summary, dear listeners, if you are trying to heal, especially if you're trying to heal from chronic, deeply entrenched issues like lots of burnout, chronic stress, and the health issues that can come along with that, you need a plan. And it can't just be any plan. Your plan should be individualized, it should be comprehensive, scalable, sustainable, and measurable in some way, shape, or form. If you would like some expert help with that, head to the description of this episode for a link to book your one-on-one session. And don't forget to use your exclusive discount code podcast for $50 off. Thank you so much for listening to the Move Nourish podcast. I'm Alyssa, your host, and I will catch you next time.